Blessings to you. Brother Barry Scott, and here's Sundays with Brother Barry Scott. We're here at the Scott Wesleyan Cathedral, and we are right in the season of Thanksgiving. And according to the way I'm counting these sermons will fall, this will be Thanksgiving weekend, so we actually have celebrated the day of Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a wonderful time. I'm actually recording this before Thanksgiving because usually I record on a Friday, a couple of sermons. So this is really my Thanksgiving sermon, and it is entitled Marks of a Thankful Heart. Marks of a Thankful Heart. And I am going to be reading from the Gospel, Luke 17, verse 11 through 19. A very familiar story, I think, to anybody that is very biblical savvy at all. Luke 17, verses 11 through 19. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." A famous cynic said, if you want to find gratitude, look for it in the dictionary. Gratitude often is a very rare commodity. The great Commander-in-General George Patton, for all his gruff, tough exterior and demeanor, was actually known as a great supporter of his men, especially when they were under pressure or duress. He realized that one of his subordinates under him was really struggling. In fact, the man was close to having a nervous breakdown. George Patton saw that he got the necessary care and help he needed to get him through that crisis, and afterwards, that man wrote George Patton a thank you letter. And he got a famous reply from General Patton, because General Patton noted in his 35 years of military service, that was the one and only letter of gratitude he ever received from any of his enlisted men. Some years ago, there was a big New York paper, and it was, of course, getting close to Christmas. And the post office was getting thousands of letters to Santa Claus. And so this paper went to the post office and got permission to print some of those letters. And that was well received. But one reporter decided he would take it a little bit further. He went back to the post office and said, "Hey, I want to do a follow-up to the letters to Santa Claus, and I want to post the thank you letters to Santa Claus." You know what? That was canceled. Do you know why? Because the post office, as best they could determine, they only received one thank you letter to Santa Claus after receiving thousands of Christmas lists to Santa Claus. Gratitude, it's pretty rare. Only one said thank you to Jesus. Well, were the others really ingrates? Oh, their actions say yes, for heartfelt gratitude is rare. What do your actions say about your heart in regard to thankfulness? What are the attitudes that lead to the actions of gratitude? How do you tell if yours is a thankful heart, and I want to look at the marks of a thankful heart. First, a thankful person is a humble person in heart. An unthankful person reveals a proud heart. The proud person says, I want more. I deserve what I have. But the humble person says, I have more than I deserve. I'm more blessed than I expected versus I deserve more than I've got and I'm getting less than I expect. I saw a cartoon many years ago. In it, there's a long line of people, and in that line, there's a husband and wife, and you can see they're headed up to the pearly gates, and there's a desk with an angel behind it, and you can see that they're going up to heaven's gate to be judged. And in the little cartoon, the wife turns to her husband as they're standing there in line waiting in a turn, and she says, Harold, for once in your life, please don't demand on getting what's really coming to you. Consider in the Old Testament the humility of a woman named Ruth. She was widowed. She was penniless. She was a foreigner responsible for an embittered mother-in-law. But she caught the eye of a godly man named Boaz. She was very humble, though it says of Ruth in Ruth chapter 2, verse 10, when Boaz noticed her, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She exclaimed, why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner? The Maasai tribe in West Africa apparently have an unusual way of saying thank you to each other. Translators tell us that when the Maasai express thanks, they bow by putting their forehead on the ground and they say, my head is on the dirt. You see, they understand well that thanksgiving at its core, thanksgiving is an act of humility. Don't ever think that humbling yourselves before God in gratitude is a sign of weakness. As a matter of fact, giving thanks is God's will for your life. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says to give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for your life. Gratitude is God's purpose for you. Pride and ingratitude love to hold hands. The former prominent preacher Henry Ward Beecher said this, pride slays thanksgiving, but a humble mind is the soil out of which thanks naturally grows. A proud man is seldom a grateful man, for he never thinks he gets as much as he deserves. If that's your attitude, you will never be content regardless of what you get and have. End of quote. Second, a thankful heart is conscious of God and others. An unthankful heart is self-centered. A pastor became very worried about a man in his congregation. When he had first been the minister at that church, this man was very active, but he was getting more and more infrequent. His business was booming. He was neglecting not only his church, but his family and his children. And so the preacher went to talk to him about his spiritual condition. He wasn't really getting through. But then he had an inspiration. He said to his parishioner, would you come over to your window and look outside? And the man said, yes. And he got up and the preacher and he walked over to the window and the preacher said, what do you see? The man looked out on the busy street and he said, well, I see people going everywhere. The preacher had also noticed a small mirror on his desk and he said, walk back over to me with your desk. And he took the mirror and he put it up to the man's face and he said, what do you see? The man said, well, I see myself. The preacher said, do you know what the difference is? Well, do you know what the difference is? The difference is a little silver. A little silver. I think of a funny story of a chairman of a big community charity called on a notorious miser, a man that was probably the richest man in that community. Sir, the fundraiser said, our records show that despite your wealth, you've never once given to this drive. You're a leader in our community. The old miser said, well, do your records show that I have an elderly mother who was left penniless when my father died? Do your records show that I have a disabled brother who's unable to work? Do your records show I have a widowed sister with small children who can barely make ends meet and those children often go hungry? No, sir, replied the embarrassed volunteer. Our records don't show those things. Well, the old miser said, I don't give anything to any of them. Why should I give anything to you? Unthankful people invariably become greedy, grasping, demanding, unthankful for others, unthoughtful of others' needs. The thankful heart looks up. The unthankful heart looks down. There was once a young man in his teenage years. He was walking down the sidewalk and he found a $20 bill. From that time on, he never lifted his eyes from the ground when walking. In the course of 40 years, he had accumulated 29,516 buttons, 54,172 pins, 7 pennies, a bent back, and a miserable disposition. At the same time, he lost the glories of the sun, the smile of friends, the song of birds, the beauties of flowers, trees, blue skies, and all that there is in life worth living for, the opportunity to serve his fellow man and spread happiness and walk with God. Unthankful people focus on themselves. Their litany, it is my need, my feelings, my hurt, my desires, and how have I been treated, denied, and neglected. A thankful heart is a full heart, while an unthankful heart is characterized by a gnawing emptiness. Paul sums up his life in Philippians chapter 4, verse 14. He says, I have received full payment. I am amply supplied. I am full and have everything I need. Well, super. He should be thankful in that condition, but then you got to realize Paul was actually in a miserable Roman prison. He was suffering for his faith. His attitude came from a thankful heart. You see, the thankful heart believes God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory by Jesus Christ. One Sunday, the Sunday school teacher asked the class what they were thankful for. One little 8-year-old boy immediately replied, I'm thankful I wear glasses. Well, that struck the teacher as odd because most boys don't really care for wearing glasses. And so she had to ask, well, why is that? The little boy answered, because it keeps the older boys from fighting with me and it keeps the girls from kissing me. Now, that's a great attitude to have, to see all things as a benefit instead of a curse. Thankful people do just that. Thankful hearts are easily content. Unthankful hearts are subject to bitterness and discontent. You see, gratitude is a vaccine preventing the invasion of a disgruntled attitude. It's an antitoxin for the poisons of the soul, an antiseptic for cleansing the heart of fault-finding and grumbling. A thankful heart focuses on the positive. In a retirement center, the social director asked the group to share what they were thankful. Everybody was seated in a circle, and it came to this one little elderly lady's time, and she said, I want to thank God for my 2 teeth. I have one in the upper and I have one in the lower, but they come together, and that's what enables me to chew my food. I ran across this little saying. I like this. It's just called, I am thankful. I am thankful for the husband who complains when his dinner's not on time because he's home with me, not with someone else. I'm thankful for the teenager who's complaining about doing dishes because that means she's at home, not on the streets. I'm thankful for the taxes that I pay because it means that I'm employed. I'm thankful for the mess to clean up after a party because it means that I've been surrounded by friends. I'm thankful for the clothes that fit a little too snug because it means I have enough to eat. I'm thankful for my shadow that watches me work because it means I'm out in the sunshine. I'm thankful for a lawn that needs mowing, windows that need cleaning, and gutters that need fixing because that means I have a home. I'm thankful for the parking spot I find at the far end of the parking lot because it means I'm capable of walking and that I've been blessed with transportation. I'm thankful for my huge heating bill because it means I'm warm. I'm thankful for the lady behind me in church that sings off key because it means that I can hear. I'm thankful for the pile of laundry and ironing because it means I have clothes to wear. I'm thankful for weariness and aching muscles at the end of the day because it means I've been capable of working hard. I'm thankful for the alarm that goes off early in the morning hours because it means that I am alive. I like that. A thankful heart will be revealed by thankful words and kindness, while an unthankful heart will murmur, complain, and be judgmental. A waitress in a busy restaurant was having a rough shift. The orders were coming very fast. She'd already been stiffed at 2 or 3 tables of her tip. She was not in a good mood. And so when a little ragged girl came in off the street and sat down at one of her booths, she was not too pleased. And she walked over to the little girl and she said, "What do you want?" The little girl said, "Ma'am, how much is an ice cream sundae?" And the waitress said, "It's $1.75, including the tax." The little girl said, "Oh, how much is a plain dish of ice cream?" And the waitress replied, "That's $1.50, including the tax." The little girl said, "Bring me the plain dish of ice cream." When the little girl finished, the waitress went over and she realized why the little girl had ordered the plain dish of ice cream. You see, all she had was $1.75. She had the $1.50 for the ice cream, and on the other side, 2 dimes and 5 pennies, the tip for the waitress. I tell you, an unthankful heart will cause us to too quickly jump to false conclusions and judgments of others. A thankful heart is a loving, caring, compassionate heart. The unthankful heart has no more room for love and compassion than it does for gratitude. A thankful heart is a giving heart. An unthankful heart is selfish and unaware of what it has been given. One is blessed by the giving, the other gridlocked by the getting. Some years ago in the Sunday school times, there was a story of a Christian school for children in India, children of untouchables. It was the custom, and you know, this time of year we hear a lot about the Operation Shoebox. Well, these children each year would receive Christmas presents from some children in England. The little girls usually got a doll, the boys some kind of toy. On one occasion, the doctor from a nearby mission hospital gave out these gifts. And in doing that, he told these boys and girls that there was another village nearby that he was going to be going to. And he said, the boys and girls there have never heard of Jesus. I'm just wondering, since all you children have got a brand new toy, What would you think of taking your old toy from last year and wrapping that up and letting me take it to these children who don't have any toys? The children all shook their head very quickly in agreement. A week later, the doctor returned to collect the gifts to take to the other home. But he was very surprised as each child filed by. They didn't give him their old toy from last year. Everyone gave their new toy. And when the missionary doctor asked why they were giving their new toys, one little girl spoke up for the group and she said, "Think what God did by giving us his only son. Could we give him less than our best?" I wonder, are we thankful enough for the cross? Are we thankful enough to give our heart to Jesus? A thankful heart gives because it recognizes how much God has given us in the gift of salvation. I close with this story. This was one of Paul Harvey's favorite stories. It starts out with an old man on a pier on the eastern seacoast of Florida. This man was out there with a large bucket of shrimp that he was pitching to a group of seagulls. He did this every Friday night, Paul Harvey said. And then Paul Harvey, as the rest of the story, backed up to get behind that. And he said in October 1942, Captain Eddie Rickenbacker, on a B-17 mission, was shot down off of New Guinea. There they found themselves on rafts in the South Pacific Ocean. The sun was hot, nothing to drink. Sharks were circling the raft. The largest raft was only 9 by 5 feet, and the biggest shark, Rickenbacker said, was 10 feet long. But the worst thing they had to deal with was starvation. 8 days, all their rations were gone. It was going to take a miracle to survive them, and then a miracle occurred. Listen to Captain Eddie Rickenbacker's own words. Cherry, that was the B-17 pilot, Captain William Cherry read the service that afternoon, and we finished with a prayer for deliverance and a hymn of praise. There was some talk, but it tapered off in the heat. With my hat pulled down over my eyes to keep out some of the glare, I dozed off. Something landed on my head. I knew it was a seagull. I don't know how I knew, I just knew. Everyone else knew too. No one said a word, but peering out from under my hat brim without moving my head, I could see the expression on their faces. They were staring at the gull. That gull meant food if I could catch it. Captain Eddie Rickenbacker caught the gull. It didn't even put up a struggle. It made a small meal for the men. Its intestines were used for bait to catch fish. Soon after, it began to rain, and the morale and the hope of those stranded men was restored. Eddie Rickenbacker and all the men survived, but he never forgot, and that's Paul Harvey's the rest of the story, because every Friday evening about sunset on the beach, there was an old man walking on Friday evening, his bucket filled with shrimp to feed the gulls, to remember that one on a day long past gave itself like manna in the wilderness. How much more to Christ, who gave his all for us on a cross, should we be thankful? They were 10 in number. All were healed, but only one had a truly thankful heart. he was in the minority. But you know what? Some minorities are good to belong to, especially the thankful heart minority. May God add his blessings to his word. Amen.